What is up, my fellow Shaggy enthusiasts? It's time for another episode of Books for Young Men to Read. Today we are talking about On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This book, if it does not make you break inside, I don't know, dude. Listen, if you're a young guy and you really need to understand emotion and understand the reality that people live in this world, you need to read a book like this. It might be a little bit too intense for some of you. For some of you, if it might be, you might not either understand it because you might not have developed the emotional weight of understanding for this kind of book, or it might just be a little bit too much for those of you who have already started on that journey. But if you want a challenge, I highly recommend you pick up this book. What is On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous? On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous is a semi-autobiographical book about Ocean Vuong and his mother and grandmother, and kind of about his life growing up. It's not one-to-one Vuong's life. It's a semi-autobiographical novel, so it's kind of aspects of it are based off of the author's life, but all the scenarios may not be real, but some of them might be, or some of them might be embellished, if that makes sense. So I think it's important to give some background about Ocean Vuong before we talk about the book. Ocean Vuong is the child of a mixed race mother. Her father was a US serviceman during the Vietnam War, and so that made life difficult for his family. His grandmother decided to split up his mother from her sisters because his mother was mixed race, and at the time, especially given the situation with the US service soldiers in Vietnam, it wasn't a great situation. Eventually his mother grew up, but she was then recognized as being mixed race, and because her father was a US serviceman, she wasn't exactly legally allowed to work jobs, and so then she sought asylum in the Philippines with Ocean Vuong as a child, fleeing Ho Chi Minh City, and then eventually she got asylum in the United States because her father was a US serviceman. Furthermore, Ocean Vuong is an openly gay man, which is also a key point in the book itself. Furthermore, unfortunately, his mother passed away shortly after the publishing of On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous, and that is especially, I think, heartbreaking learning, considering this book is really about him, his grandmother and his mother and their lives, and kind of how they're intertwined, and it's about them trying to communicate with each other through life and kind of using the book as a means of communication. I didn't know that Ocean Vuong's mother passed away shortly after this book came out, and I think if I'd known that when I was reading this, I think it would have even more even talking about it right now, I'm feeling oh my god, especially having read the book, just really heartbroken for the author, and just thinking about it. So like I mentioned, On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous is sort of semi-autobiographical because it's not just following Ocean Vuong's life in a semi-autobiographical way, but it's also following his mother and his grandmother, and kind of seeing things from their perspective as well as his own as a child. Again, it's not necessarily one-to-one an autobiography, it's semi-autobiographical, so some of the situations may have happened, some of them maybe the slight circumstances of them have happened, but throughout the book you are really given a gleam into just the understanding of the sort of life that Ocean Vuong led, the kind of struggles that his refugee family had to face, the struggles that his grandmother had to face, the issues with his mother having been mixed race in Vietnam at the time, and the struggles that she would have faced growing up and when she grew up. It's very much a heart-wrenching narrative. If you want to think of a book that's similar, and this does feel a little bit wrong comparing it to, but if you think of something like Pachinko, where it follows multiple generations, that's the kind of thing you're looking at. You're looking at multiple generations being studied. Obviously, they're very different circumstances, especially given On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous is semi-autobiographical, whereas Pachinko is completely fiction. At the very least, we assume it is completely fiction. But that kind of analysis of each generation is really heartbreaking, because you see the various struggles each one has to go through, and Ocean Vuong is very good at pointing out the specific struggles that his grandmother would have faced, that his mother faces, the ones he does, and then kind of how he is able to perceive his mother and his grandmother's struggles as himself being this child for much of the book, and then a kind of a teenager as well, and seeing what it is like, seeing their struggle from his perspective, but then also sometimes writing from their perspective. And it's, listen, if you're a young guy and you really need to understand struggle and understand because oftentimes people like Ocean Vuong and his family, especially given their refugee status, they're demonized by the press. I mean, oftentimes young men are being pushed down this pipeline into demonizing people like Ocean Vuong and his family. And genuinely, this is again, semi-autobiographical way of seeing their struggle and understanding their struggle and understanding what, these are very much humans. It humanizes them because they are humans in the first place, and also because oftentimes when you are reading things, especially articles about refugees, they are often dehumanized. They are seen as numbers, they are seen as this mass glob and not individuals, when in reality they are individuals. They are individuals fleeing for their lives for various reasons. Obviously, in Ocean Vuong's case, his mother, because she was mixed race, and because of the kind of tensions in Vietnam surrounding that, especially given the fact that his grandfather was a US serviceman. That in particular is the issue for them. If you look at refugees now, they're fleeing war and persecution. You are seeing, as of me recording this video this morning, we've seen just mass killings in places like Sudan because of political issues that these people have nothing to do with. And people fleeing Sudan will flee and become refugees, and they're not responsible for anything that's happening to them. Same thing with places like Syria and Libya. None of these people are responsible for what is happening in their countries, but they are the ones being demonized by particularly the media and by politicians. And reading a story like On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous, you kind of see the humanization of not just, the first generation who were refugees, Ocean Vuong is technically a first generation refugee as well because he came as a child, but as an adult, but then also the children of those refugees and their kind of life and their perception, and kind of how the struggles of their families do weigh heavy on them as well. And yet we will still have politicians in the media describing them or portraying them as not human, just as a number. Alongside that, there's a portion of the book about Ocean Vuong, or at least the character that's meant to portray Ocean Vuong, kind of discovering their sexuality and discovering who they are. And I think the way it's written is really heartfelt and wholesome, but also has that, edge might not be the best word to use there, but has that aspect of it where, often, especially Ocean Vuong is about 10 years older than me, and even when I was the age Ocean Vuong's character is when they're discovering their sexuality, even then it was a bit scary for people to come out. So then going back about 10 or so years earlier as well, that also would have been a bit of a struggle as well, as alongside Ocean Vuong being, a ethnic minority in the United States at the time as well. It's doubly difficult. And again, I think it's gotten a lot better than when I was young. Obviously, when I was young, acceptance of people who, were gay or not heterosexual, possibly was more of a negative portrayal when I was younger. I think now there are slightly better portrayals of that in media and treatment of them in society, but also we're seeing, this rise of the far right, anti-gay rights bills, the United States. You've got the parties looking at potentially getting rid of gay marriage. You see even these supposedly progressive party demonizing LGBTQ plus people. It's a struggle even now, and I think young men especially, like the internet is especially putting this kind of like, you should be against other people having rights because apparently them having rights makes it more difficult for you to have rights, and that just makes absolutely no sense at all. So, again, you see Ocean Vuong's perspective on kind of discovering his sexuality in the book, obviously semi-autobiographically. I just feel like I need to reiterate that when you go off to read this. But again, you need to be able to be consuming like media, well, books in this instance, that are written in a way that isn't super superfluous in its descriptions, but also humanizes the individuals, because oftentimes people aren't humanized that way, and you need to start understanding that. And I think, again, this being semi-autobiographical helps because, obviously I think it's easier to consume and understand and see things through fiction, but also having that knowledge that actually this is in some way in line with Ocean Vuong's own life and experience helps you understand, actually, no, people struggle through this, or at least, non-heterosexual people have this, perception or are afraid of being perceived in certain ways. And it's important that you, as a young man, need to understand that people will struggle. And I know, again, it's been a long time since I've been in school. So maybe in school you guys are way better and way more progressive than when I was in school. But when I remember in school, it was easy to make it the butt of a joke. I'm glad, I think, when I was in school, it started to change, and thankfully, some of the guys at school were comfortable enough to come out, and they weren't disrespected. But maybe that was a minority case. I don't know, because my own personal experience, I don't know that, and I don't know what it's like in schools now for you guys. But these people are human, and given the political climate, it's more and more difficult for them to want to be themselves. And if you are someone who's, a heterosexual guy, you need to just be decent, you just need to be a nice guy to them, genuinely, and it goes such a long way. Like I said at the beginning, this book genuinely ripped my heart open. And I think it's good that you read books like this. I think reading things like this genuinely helps you develop empathy and become a better person. And I wish when I was young, people were encouraging me to read books like this. I'm very thankful I managed to find books that made me feel that way on accident, basically, when I was 18 something years old. But if you can actually seek out this book and read it, I genuinely think it would do wonders for you just as a person, and just to give you kind of that knowledge of people and that empathy that is key to you being a decent functioning person in society. So as always, in the description you can get links to On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, where you can pick up the book or get it from your local library. You should go and sign up for a library card if you're watching this video. Thank you for watching. I want to give a big shout out to my members. My members get special perks. They get emojis, badges, they get extra videos, they get to be part of a book club that we launched this week. So if you become a member, you can still join and be in time for the first book we're reading next month, so in March. If you're interested, it's £2 a month. You can click down below to check that out, or elsewhere on my channel. Again, like I always say with these videos, you don't need to be a young man to read these to watch these books. I just specifically make these videos to encourage, young guys, I don't know, teenage to about 24, 25, to check out this kind of literature because it's important for them and helps combat, the spread of like far-right ideology we are seeing. Thank you for watching, and I hope you read a great book today.